The San Francisco 49ers announced a set of practice squad transactions that underscore the organization's ongoing effort to balance short-term depth with long-term development along the trenches, signing defensive lineman Evan Anderson and offensive lineman Killian Zierer while releasing defensive lineman William Bradley King to create space. The moves arrived by way of a team communication and come as the club finalizes its roster ecosystem around the 53-man squad, the 16-man practice squad, and the flexible game day elevation mechanisms that teams increasingly use to navigate injuries, matchups, and week-to-week personnel needs. For San Francisco, a franchise that has built its recent identity on controlled physicality up front, the additions of Anderson and Zierer read as targeted investments in size, length, and moldable traits, and the departure of Bradley King is a reminder of how fluid the margins can be during the late summer churn. Anderson, listed at 6'3" and 326 pounds, returns to the building where his professional journey began. He originally entered the league with San Francisco as an undrafted free agent on May 6, 2024, and over the course of that year appeared in 12 games, including one start, producing 24 total tackles with 1.0 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. He was waived by the team on August 27, 2025, a transactional note that often signals a numbers squeeze more than an indictment of a player's trajectory. The fact that the 49ers circled back to add him to the practice squad suggests that both parties saw enough in the initial run to view a developmental reunion as mutually beneficial. When a young interior defender already has live-fire reps in the team's system and building familiarity with the coaching points, terminology, and culture, a practice squad return can accelerate refinement rather than restart it. There is substantive college production behind the profile. A 23-year-old native of Orlando, Florida, Anderson played at Florida Atlantic University from 2020 through 2023, appearing in 39 games with an impressive ledger of 145 total tackles, 20.0 tackles for loss, 7.0 sacks, 2 passes defensed, and 3 fumble recoveries. He capped his collegiate career with third-team All-AAC honors in 2023, a recognition that frames his tape as more than just box score accumulation. For evaluators, the appeal with a compact, stout-framed interior defender often begins with leverage and translates to reliability against the run. On film at FAU and in snippets of his first professional year, Anderson showed the kind of low-pad, rolling hips posture that lets a tackle anchor on contact, muddy interior gaps, and forcebacks to hesitate at the mesh point. The 49ers have consistently valued interior linemen who can win the first half-second of a rep, whether by absorbing a double team without giving ground or by denting the line of scrimmage enough to spill runs to flowing linebackers, and Anderson's body type and play temperament align with that template. In the modern NFL, interior defenders are also judged by what they can contribute on long and late downs. Anderson's 1.0 sack in limited pro action is not a defining figure, but it hints at the ability to push the pocket rather than merely sit in it. He does his best work as a straight-line power rusher, a controlled bull into a forklift finish, hands inside, chest clean, eyes on the quarterback. For a practice squad interior defender, that profile is not about headline pressure totals so much as it is about complementary disruption. If a primary edge rusher wins the arc and the interior tackle collapses the depth of the pocket by half a yard, a quarterback's escape routes narrow and the defense's rush plan coheres. That is the kind of hidden value contribution a developmental, nose, chart 1 technique can supply, especially when late-season game plans inevitably lean into opponent-specific tendencies. Zierer arrives at the other end of the line with a different axis of intrigue. The 6'7", 312-pound offensive lineman originally entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent with the Houston Texans on May 12, 2023. Across 2 professional seasons, he has accumulated time on Houston's practice squad in 2023 and 2024, then participated in 2025 training camps with the Atlanta Falcons and Cleveland Browns before landing in Santa Clara. The football life of a developmental tackle commonly involves learning multiple pass set families, shaping hand timing to match those sets, and calibrating footwork to handle speed-to-power rushers who test leverage immediately. For a player with Zierer's length, the project is to convert wingspan into a real estate advantage rather than a balance liability. If he frames rushers early with an independent inside hand and keeps his outside hand patient rather than lunging, the length becomes a first answer, not a last resort. If his base narrows and his head leans, that length can be used against him. A practice squad environment gives him exactly the reps he needs. Scout team snaps against NFL speed without the binary of game day results. The international through line adds another layer. A 25-year-old native of Munich, Germany, Zierer transitioned to Auburn University in 2020 and appeared in 21 games with 16 starts for the Tigers. At the collegiate level, Auburn's mix of protections asked tackles to function in a variety of situations. Quick game sets that demand urgency off the snap, slide protections that require timing with guards, and vertical sets that test patience and trust in depth. In all of those, the objective for a long tackle remains the same. Marry the first 3 kicks with posture and landmarks so the rush point stays predictable. In the run game, he offers the frame to reach and seal on the front side of zone and the surface area to create a blunt force wash on the backside. San Francisco's offensive identity has, in recent years, blended wide zone DNA with a multiple run menu that includes gap and duo, making versatility in footwork and target acquisition a foundational trait. Zierer fits as a clay-rich project for that canvas. The corresponding release of Bradley King, who signed with the team on August 27, 2025, reflects the hard calculus of late August and early September, when clubs are compressing depth charts into finely grained roles. For an edge defender on the practice squad, the leap from developmental piece to game day elevation can hinge on a 2-week injury to a starter, a specific opponent's protection profile, or a spike in special teams utility. When a team toggles its depth across the defensive front, choices often aren't linear comparisons between 2 players in a vacuum. They are composite decisions that factor body types, positional flexibility, and how the offensive and defensive practice looks need to be simulated that week. Releasing Bradley King does not close the door on future engagements. Transactions at this layer of the roster are frequently iterative, but it does make the current bet explicit. For now, San Francisco wants a big interior anchor and a long tackle to simulate and solve the problems that are most likely to present themselves as the season unfolds. Zooming out, these kinds of moves speak to where the 49ers believe marginal gains still exist for a roster with championship aspirations. The top of San Francisco's depth chart has earned its stripes on both sides of the ball, and the coaching staff's weekly challenge often lives in contingency planning. Practice squad signings answer what-if questions before they are asked on a Sunday afternoon. What if an interior defensive lineman rolls an ankle during a Thursday practice and the staff needs a plug-and-play early down body? What if a swing tackle tweaks a hamstring and the team needs an elevation who can function at left or right in a pinch? What if a late-week opponent addition changes the scout team demand for a particular pass-rushing style or a specific run concept the defense must mimic? With Anderson and Zierer, the 49ers purchase optionality for those scenarios. Anderson's tape offers a useful study in how a player's stature can be used as a weapon rather than a ceiling. At 6'3", he is not the towering type that wins on sheer length inside. But leverage is leverage, especially when paired with a 326-pound frame that can absorb and redirect. On double teams, good interior defenders track three numbers: the IBE, angle of the guard's hip, the timing of the center's hand placement, and the tilt of their own shoulders. Anderson tends to stay square on initial contact, keeps his base staggered enough to avoid getting forklifted, and looks for opportunities to split with a hip turn once the second blocker's engagement loosens. When he times that hip turn, an inside shoulder pry with the outside leg driving, he can become the hinge around which a run must bend. That shows up in short yardage and goal line situations where half yards decide outcomes. The forced fumble and fumble recovery he notched in his rookie season are individual moments, but they often stem from the same habits: staying alive in the play long enough that the first contact by a teammate creates a strip sack scenario, or a ball on the ground that an alert interior defender can fall on. There is development still to come. Like many young interior linemen transitioning from college to the pros, Anderson's rush plan benefits from a tighter menu executed with more precise hand timing. A bull rush is effective if it is set up by the credible threat of a quick swim or a cross-face rip. Offensive linemen set their anchor based on which loss they fear most. If he continues to diversify when he brings his offhand, and how he alternates between long arm and two-hand strikes, his power will travel more consistently to third and medium. Practice squad weeks are where that kind of micro work lives. One-on-ones during individual periods, pass rush circuits that focus on wrist control, and film feedback loops that track how often he's winning first contact versus maintaining it. For Sufiu Zirer, the developmental objectives are different, but equally coachable. At 6'7", pad level is not just a coaching point cliché, it is a physics problem. The first two kicks in pass pro must be coupled with a knee bend that keeps the hips behind the heels and the chest over the thighs. If a tall tackle drifts upright too early, a speed-to-power rusher will turn those long levers into handles. The positive with Zirer is that his background at Auburn exposed him to SEC edge traits on a weekly basis, and his early pro stops forced him to compress a lot of technique into short windows. He has the length to land a meaningful inside strike and the mass to transition that strike into a contouring torque that runs a rusher past the spot. In the run game, the emphasis will be on foot-in-the-ground violence: strike, latch, and run. The feet without getting over the insteps. San Francisco's emphasis on displacement in the run game, whether horizontally on wide zone or vertically on duo, fits an athlete who can pair length with sustained drive. The timing of these signings also matters. This is the period when practice squads are not only depth reservoirs, but also rehearsal spaces for the ideas a coaching staff wants to test before they commit them to live games. On defense, that can mean tinkering with fronts that require a sturdier nose to eat snaps on early downs, freeing up attacking three techniques and allowing linebackers to stay clean. On offense, it can mean repping pocket movement concepts that ask tackles to protect on the move, changing launch points for the quarterback, and stressing the defensive edge's discipline. Bringing a veteran practice squad tackle into those reps ensures the looks are representative and the learning is sticky for the starters and rotational players. Meanwhile, the defense gets to feel the weight of a 326-pounder on inside run days, which adds authenticity to the work. There is a cultural component as well. The 49ers, under their current leadership, have promoted a competitive environment in which practice is not a formality, but a product. Players who arrive on the practice squad are often told that their first role is to make the people in front of them better. The second is to close the gap so that when their number is called, the delta in performance is small. Anderson has seen the inside of this building before, understands the rhythms of the week here, and can step into that ethos with minimal onboarding. Zirer, with stops in multiple offensive systems, brings a catalog of technique coaching that can be harmonized with what the 49ers teach, giving the staff another perspective on how to solve common protection problems. A practice squad player who communicates well, studies opponent tendencies with diligence, and treats scout team assignments like live auditions often becomes the steady-hand coach's trust for a late-season elevation. Games hinge on the depth of the trenches in ways that rarely make the highlight reel. A third-quarter series after an injury timeout, where the backup tackle must survive 2 bull rushes and a twist to allow a shot play to develop. A 3rd and 1 on which a practice squad defensive tackle elevated that morning submarines a double. Team and forces a bounce into a waiting linebacker. A field goal block unit where the interior defender's surge shrinks the kicker's margin for error. These are 5-second sequences that tilt outcomes and live in the domain of the players. Teams stash on the practice squad for weeks before they are needed. By investing 2 of those slots in Anderson and Zierer, the 49ers are attempting to strengthen the chain where it is most likely to be tested by the attrition of an NFL season. It is also worth noting how these moves interact with the opponent-specific simulation work that takes place Wednesday through Friday. When San Francisco faces a team that uses a heavy inside zone and duo diet, giving the first-team offense long looks at a nose tackle who can approximate the mass and leverage of that opponent's anchor helps linemen calibrate their hands and landmarks. When the upcoming defense features long, patient ends who try to build the pocket before countering inside, tossing a 6'7" tackle across from the edge group in scout team periods helps calibrate counters, rush lanes, and hand usage. Practice squads are not simply lists. They are palettes that coordinators use to paint the week's preparation. Anderson and Zierer widen the brush options. The financial and contractual mechanics of practice squad life are less visible than the game day actives list, but they shape decisions at the margins. Practice squad deals afford teams the flexibility to elevate a player for game day a limited number of times in a season without subjecting him to waivers, while also allowing other clubs to sign that player to their 53-man roster if they so choose. That fluid market reality incentivizes clubs to target profiles they believe can help them specifically in the near term, since the risk of losing a player after significant development exists. It also explains why familiarity matters. When a team like San Francisco brings back a player like Anderson, the organizational knowledge on both sides reduces risk. For Zierer, the book is more open-ended, but the pipeline from practice squad rep to 46 or 48-man game day active is well worn for developmental tackles across the league. From a scouting vantage point, the complementary nature of the 2 additions stands out. Anderson represents interior density and leverage, traits that stabilize early downs and shrink creases before they open. Zierer represents edge length and developmental pass protection, traits that can keep a pocket clean long enough for schemed explosives to land. In a league increasingly defined by space manipulation, condensing it on defense, creating it on offense, both player types serve the geometry of the sport. That geometry is why a team like the 49ers, known for star power at premium positions, spends real attention on the structural pieces that make the whole machine work across 17 regular season games, and, if all goes to plan, a month of football after that. For Bradley King, the move is the kind of speed bump most edge rushers encounter at least once, while trying to secure a foothold in the league. Released from the practice squad days after signing, he will survey a market that rewards traits and fresh tape. The league's macro trend toward multiple fronts and hybrid edges means his next opportunity could materialize quickly. And the professional reality is that practice squad doors open and close every week. If San Francisco's needs shift again, reunions are common. If another club sees a fit right now, swift transitions are part of the job. That churn is not evidence of failure. It is a feature of a system designed to keep 30 team agile. The 49ers' calculus here is straightforward. Stack the room with players whose strengths align with foreseeable needs. Prioritize familiarity and teachability, and preserve flexibility to adapt as the regular season stretches and compresses. With Anderson, coaches get a known quantity who can take coaching points from meeting room to practice field without translation, offering stoutness inside and a baseline of disruptive potential. With Zierer, coaches get a long athletic frame to coach into the offense's protection rules, a swing tackle candidate whose growth can be accelerated by daily exposure to a high-standard edge room. With Bradley King's release, coaches sharpen the roster's focus on the profiles they deem most pressing now. It is easy to treat practice squad transactions as administrative footnotes, but they are often the breadcrumbs that lead to late-season storylines. A December road win sometimes hinges on the third series of the fourth quarter, when an elevated defensive tackle gives a starter 8 snaps of rest and plays them clean. A January playoff game sometimes swings on a backup tackle, sealing the backside long enough for a cutback to burst. The names that do that work frequently first appear in quiet releases like this one. In that sense, the day's moves are less about headlines and more about scaffolding. San Francisco believes Anderson, and Zierer can hold weight. The coming weeks will determine how much, how soon, and in which moments their value is felt. The organization's track record with developmental linemen is part of the context. The coaching staff has turned undrafted free agents and later-round picks into reliable contributors by isolating 1 or 2 technique pillars and hammering them until they are second nature. With Anderson, that might mean anchoring technique against double teams, reshaping his first step angle on outside zone, and refining 2 pass rush counters he can carry into any matchup. With Zierer, that might mean drilling independent hand, usage until the inside hand becomes a jab that arrests momentum, tightening vertical set landmarks so speed rushers can't corner the pocket, and building out a catalog of inside-out footwork for gap schemes. The practice field is the laboratory for those experiments, and the practice squad is the grant that funds the lab time. There is also the human element of fit. Players who thrive in San Francisco's environment often speak about clarity of role, knowing exactly what a Tuesday install expects, what a Wednesday practice demands, and how their Thursday work will translate on Sunday. For a returning player like Anderson, who has already navigated the building's expectations, that clarity can be reassuring. For a newcomer like Zierer, it can be motivating. A framework that shows a path from room guy to elevation to active on Sunday. The staff's reputation for direct feedback, coupled with a veteran locker room that absorbs and transmits standards, gives developmental players a structure within which to grow. The expectation is that the work habits travel as much as the technique does. In the near term, the football calendar will bring the kind of routine that makes weeks blur together. Install, practice, recovery, repeat. Within that routine, the impact of Anderson and Zierer will be felt first in the quality of the looks they provide. Quarterbacks feel it as pockets are shaped. Running backs feel it as landmarks are challenged. And defenders feel it as fits are, tested at full speed. If and when the call comes for a game day elevation, the organization will ask a simple question. Can the job be done at the same speed and standard the room has set? The answer will be built 1 rep at a time over the coming practices. For now, the record shows 2 signings and 1 release. The names are Evan Anderson in, Killian Zierer in, and William Bradley King out. The substance is a little deeper. A nose-leaning interior defender with live game snaps in this system, returning to continue his development, a long tackle with SEC and AFC practice squad reps, arriving to be molded into a swing option, and any Edge rusher moving on as the numbers and needs point the roster in a particular direction. In a league where the line between readiness and scramble can be a single practice field injury, these are the kinds of Tuesday moves that set up Sunday stability. As the season takes shape, the 49ers will look to their stars for the spectacular and to their practice squad linemen for the dependable. If Anderson and Zierer deliver that dependability when asked, this quiet announcement will have done loud work.